what happens when you follow the call to leave behind everything you were supposed to be to become everything you truly are. In this heartfelt episode, I sit down with my Viking brother from another mother, John Trapp, to talk about the hero's journey in real life, from family legacy and business success to selling it all and rediscovering his truth, anxiety, sobriety, and realignment, how numbing the misalignment only made it louder, and how facing sobriety and facing the truth led to lasting peace and joy. The rise of Longship, a modern brotherhood helping men ditch the armor and carry their loads together through counsel, challenge, and community. This conversation is so powerful. It's full of wisdom, it's full of laughs, and it's full of heart. Whether you're navigating your own pivot, you're craving deeper alignment, or you just want to hear from someone who's walked through the fire and has come out shining, this one is for you. Hey there, it's Jillian, your guide to all things joy, and this is the Joy Journey Podcast. Oh my God. Hello and welcome to the Joy Journey Podcast, where joy is an inside job. I'm your host, Jillian Shecker, and today I'm so excited to bring you Mr. John Trapp. John is dedicated to developing human-centric leadership teams. His entrepreneurial journey began in 2001 as co-founder of Total Art Inc. He navigated family succession, 50-50 partnership, and business growth before selling in 2015. John became a certified integral coach in Bali and co-founded Edmonton's first meditation studio upon returning to Canada. And joining Clark Builders in 2017, he rose to VP of People and Wellness, integrating well-being practices into corporate culture. John has since co-created Longship to share his passion for inner development by growing a powerful community of men with an aligned mission. Despite outward success, he faced personal challenges, including anxiety, depression, and alcoholism. These challenges are the backdrop of a truly unique arc that has taken John on his very own hero's journey. I've personally known John since I smashed into his family, not like in a car, but like just energetically. In 2016, I was feeling into like how we met and like what that looked like. And so what I need to say about that is beyond all of the titles and accomplishments, and there are so many, what stands out most to me is John's heart. He's the kind of person who's not afraid to go deep. He wants to chat all crazy and wild things. He leads with vulnerability, and he shows up fully for the people he loves and those he serves. I bring John into all of my maybe not last round, but you're coming in this one, I hope, John, of my Joy Facilitator trainings as an example of the healthy masculine. He's a shining example of genuine leadership, and I believe the world needs more of this at this time. He is my Viking brother from another mother. I'm so excited to bring you the magic of John Trapp.
Wow. Thanks, Gigi. What an awesome intro. It's a humbling experience to hear somebody just read back to you some of those things. I was listening. I'm like, whoa, does this guy know what he wants to do or what? Not really. All over the spectrum.
Enter the honesty.
Like what? Corporate, entrepreneur, men's work. What are we doing? And we're doing all of it. So That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you get to do it all. Oh, you're also my manifestor brother from another mother. So we have so much to discuss. It's going to be a fun and wild ride, I'm sure. I do want to kind of dive in like how we know each other, which I did say a little bit around smashing into your family. But so John, so he'll call me Gigi and I call him Juan, and it's just the way it is. These are our nicknames.
Yeah, we're going to try. We would just laugh the whole time. That's a good context because we're not changing today.
And John is my bestie, Mandy Trapp's husband, who, again, I did meet at Lifestyle Meditation when you guys came back from Bali, first class, first day. And I remember meeting you during our 25-hour teacher training. It was that first weekend. And John is still, I believe, brought in as like, I still think of you as Conscious Captain. Did I make that name up, or did we all call you the Conscious Captain? Captain Consciousness?
Maybe that was a nickname I wasn't aware of.
Okay, I called you the Conscious Captain.
Thank you. Okay.
Conscious Captain has arrived. Because you were teaching like conscious business creation. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think, on the 25 hours. So yeah, Mandy, felt like there was some need for people that were led by their heart to both take the meditation training. But of course, Mandy's inspiration was always she can't be everywhere. And there's so many amazing people that the gift of meditation, if they could deepen their practice, they wanted to go out and share that or integrate it into what they were already doing in the world. So yeah, I'd been on my own journey of, meditation being massively impactful in my life and how that had evolved what I was doing, more like who I was in the arenas that I was facilitating or participating in or leading or following or whatever. And there's so many heart-directed entrepreneurs that I saw, myself included. Probably like anything that we want to teach is something that we probably want and need for ourselves. And that was the case for me. I think we called it the business of doing good. And that
Yes.
idea was, no matter what you're going to do, if you wanted to do it more in a business context per se, or this was something you were doing not just, as a passion project, but people wanted to do it for work, if you could say it that way. I just brought in some of my experience and some of the principles and fundamentals that are universal, whether you're teaching meditation or running a construction company. So yeah, we called it the business of doing good. And I would just speak about sort of some of my entrepreneurial journey and experiences. And for me, one of the most heartbreaking things, or the biggest inspiration for me, was seeing people that were inspired by practices that are so fundamental, I think, to not only a fulfilling life and a balanced life and a harmonized life, but a joyful life. Gigi, should we sneak
Dare
that
you
in?
say?
I'm going to plug. I'm going to plug you all day long on this because meditation brought so much joy for me, and that connection to what real internal joy was. But beyond that, I could see people be inspired and ready to sort of just jump in, right? Jump in a new direction usually. And it was heartbreaking to see them struggle when they,
Mm.
were so lit up by something that is so foundational for all of us, and then kind of be met head on with the things that happen in business that are universal. And so I just use that time to really, just share my experience to help people expand their context and go, okay, these are the things that I'm also going to have to deal with in relation to doing this kind of more professionally, if you will.
I love it. And that's when I met you. And that was when I was like, that is one cool bro, if you know what I'm saying. Then I weasel my way in, and now they can't get rid of me. So
There was no weaseling.
we almost ended up like living on their land, but that couldn't happen. So we're moving 8 minutes away from the Trapps. We've already timed the drive. It's fun. Okay. So I feel like, there's so many questions that I have. You've led such a rich life and there's so many places we could go. I was feeling like, let's start present. Let's start with the present. Let's start with right now. Like, what would you say, where are you currently in this season of your life? Who is John Trapp in this season?
Wow. Well, I'm going to, I'll start with now, but I will naturally probably give some context, or this will probably open up the next kind of direction we go. So the season now is, I would characterize it as kind of finally, and dare I say, coming out of the desert. When you did the opening and you talked about the hero's journey, which, the word hero has some context as far as, in no way do I feel like I'm calling myself a hero, but just that metaphor of, being courageous enough to follow your heart and follow your path and to explore outside of your pre-programmed conditioning and societal expectations and family expectations. So for me now, I feel like I'm kind of coming around back home to kind of share from what that exploration has been for me personally. And just being surprised by the things that I'm involved in are, like you said in the opening, kind of a real amazing mix of kind of where I started, on some of the business things I'm involved in, and opportunities opening up that are where I started back in 2001, but re-engaging them in who I am now. And the feeling of that is completely different, being driven and motivated, and the word driven sort of maybe the wrong word, like inspired and following the doors that are opening and not questioning, and being able to actually serve from an experienced place where it doesn't take as much stress or driving or grinding. I'm in a place where I can actually serve multiple things that my heart really cares about, or the role that I've decided to play both in my family or in my career. And I really feel like I'm able to serve a multitude of things in a way. In the past, I really struggled thinking I always sort of fought for one clear direction. Like, am I supposed to do this or am I supposed to do that? And that definitely still exists in me. This sort of, I know you mentioned human design, and kind of learning more about my human design. And it's helped me make sense of why my tendency to feel split is. In that I have, I won't, maybe you go in depth with others on human design, but I do have a split in my design where my crown or my intellect side is definitely pretty strong. And so it will be very convincing on where my head wants to go. And then the other parts of my being are directing me in a different way. So I've now been able to kind of harness both and choose avenues that I get to serve in a multitude of ways. So yeah, like you mentioned in the opening, Jillian, that felt weird to say.
You.
Jillian. Yeah.
Yes, I feel like I'm in trouble.
Gigi. I know. It's like you gave them context. Jillian.
Just
I don't
give
know
me
if
old Jillian Rose, why don't you?
I don't think I've ever told you Jillian in my life. That was fun. That was the intellect. That was the intellect part. We engaged that bad boy.
Okay, John Douglas.
So exactly. So I would surmise that with where I'm at in my life is the ability to serve this career of corporate experience and business experience effectively as kind of my whole person, and bringing my beingness to that arena, like you mentioned with some of my past experiences with when I was originally there, or even, like I said, coming out of the desert. As I was still finding myself, I didn't know how to do that necessarily the way I do now. And then with things like Longship, where I always felt this pressure to kind of integrate everything into that one thing. And I'm really enjoying kind of having different arenas where I'm still me serving in the corporate world, let's call it, although it feels a little less corporate these days, which is lovely. And then also doing something that I really feel is aligned with my heart and my personal mission without it having to be forced or curated in some of the business rules, if you will. So yeah, I feel like if people, your listeners, have followed sort of Joseph Campbell's teachings on the hero's journey, and for those who aren't familiar with it, if you've watched Star Wars, it's that story arc where you have this call to leave what is familiar and what is known, and that I definitely felt that, and we can talk about that if you want. And you sort of
I do want. Let's dive in.
Do you want to get? Okay, I told you I was going to really get back. You wanted to start today. I'm like, I'm going to read.
So, okay, do you want to give us like a hero's journey quick points and then dive in, or do you want to just dive in and we'll talk about each point along the way?
Yeah, let's talk about each one along the way.
Okay.
The context that would be helpful in 2001, since you brought it up, I started my first business, Total R, that you mentioned, and that really was in line with what was expected of me. So my dad was in the same sort of industry, and I was fortunate enough as a young kid to, grow up in a comfortable environment where I really got to pursue my passions and my heart. So, and I always joke between my dad and I, he's a pretty prototypical type A, kind of hard-nosed, hardworking kind of guy. And I was like this, I had really white hair as a kid, and even redder face than I do now. And I would cry at every long distance television commercial at the time. And I was like, I
get you.
Right. I was always like, my dad must have looked at me as like, how did I get this, son? So, but my childhood allowed me to really pursue my passions, which was skiing. And I was fortunate to, just really kind of find my joy in what I love to do. And of course did school and all those things. But there was a defining point right when I was about 18 or 19 and had an opportunity to go on a ski scholarship to the US. Or my parents thought, well, this is enough, following the passion side. It's time for John to gain some responsibility and get into the family business. So after some deliberation, I went with their suggestion and went into construction engineering and kind of adopted their beliefs that if I were to follow the business path, then I could find my passion afterwards, if you will,
Mm.
sort of learn how to pay for life, and started working for my dad. And then surprisingly enough, after about a year or two after getting out of school, he sold the business. So the plan
Mm.
was for me to kind of inherit and work for the business and buy him out. And that just showed me how plans can change when you're adopting somebody else's expectations. And he
Mhm.
sold the business, and it was like the biggest bump that I'd ever received, where I was like, whoa, how did this plan that we make all of a sudden change? Where
You were
they were following
sideswiped.
what yeah, I was sideswiped, and they were following their vision and path. So I don't begrudge them for that at all. But it really showed me how, if you're not following your own, that was the first lesson. And so, was pretty committed at that point, and ended up, working for my dad's business in the new public company. And then, about a year in, decided, no, we want to do this for ourselves. I wanted to do it for myself. So left and started my own company, Total R, with a business partner, and was really motivated to kind of prove the world wrong, if you will,
Mhm.
and prove my dad wrong, of like, hey, you would have been better off selling this to us. We can do this.
Nothing wrong with
And
some good old fashioned FU energy, you know?
yeah, big time. I am going to prove to the world. And, so I did that, and I was really solely, in my mind, I was very solely focused on that and generating financial results. Like, I'm going to make this business more profitable, bigger than my dad, very FU energy, like you said, but didn't lose all of myself in it, in that I met Mandy, obviously, in that time. We started our family. But, I was 80/20 focused on really creating this life financially that I felt was going to, still searching for joy within that.
Mm.
And I often say, zooming forward a little bit, probably about 7 years, I'd hit all those financial markers, like grew the business bigger than my dad had it, made more money than my dad did in a single
Mhm.
year. And there was something inside of me that it just evaporated. Like, I didn't know that's what I was pursuing, but then it was just like, yeah, you did it, you're done. And
Mm.
that led to the beginning of the call, I would say, and the beginning of the search, where, I, at that time, really not ironically, serendipitously, my anxiety was at its greatest. The story I often tell is, we had a lake lot. I'm in my late 20s, and I had the things
Well,
that I
nailing it.
thought, yeah, I thought would take a whole sort of lifetime to create, right?
You had the
And
success, the
they
perceived
had the
success, the external rewards, the things that a lot of people strive for like their whole lives.
Right. And so the moment that was the most educational in that learning was driving my family, my young family, the three kids, Mandy, a nice suburban, whatever, towing a beautiful brand new boat out to the lake lot. And I had to pull over because my anxiety was so bad
Mm.
that I was worried I was going to pass out, or I couldn't complete the drive. And that was the
Mm.
first time that I actually shared with Mandy how poorly I was actually doing, because
Mm.
I had hid that until that point. And this was like the first time I kind of had to fess up. And
Mhm.
there's a long story behind that, but it also synonymous with my meditation journey, as Mandy's always been into those modalities. And I thought I was too, because if Mandy's doing it, I would just benefit from being in the room, or osmosis. Mandy's meditating, therefore I'm meditating. Turns out it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
And, and I went to, after kind of admitting that, she's like, oh, maybe go to the doctor, see, what's going on. And the doctor prescribed me Ativan, and said, oh, this will help you if you're feeling these panic attacks coming on. And I got the Ativan in my hand, and, my pocket prescription, whatever. And I was driving home from that appointment. And it was the first time and I hadn't taken any of the medicine or pharmaceutical. And I hadn't taken any of it, and I didn't have any anxiety on the way home. And it showed me mental, like how in my head this was.
Yeah.
And that's when I first saw, you know what? Okay, I can't do this via osmosis with Mandy. I got to embrace my own practice, and really started diving into the work that Mandy was doing. And my world kind of opened up there. And that allowed me to get quiet enough to actually hear my heart and hear what John
Mm,
was trying to tell me. And that's
mm.
where I would say that call came from, which is led to, I call myself a golden retriever. I'm pretty damn loyal. And,
Also
it
known
took
as a
me,
Cancerian in astrology.
yeah, it wasn't like some people, I don't know enough about astrology, of like the people who are like, have that moment and they're like, okay, I'm changing the program. It took
Yeah.
me 7 more years to listen to
Yes.
myself,
Yeah.
sort of working through all of that. So that was the beginning of the call. And then eventually it led to me deciding that I couldn't learn anymore without changing the circumstances substantially. And that's when, I sold the business in 2015 to my partner, and, listened to the call and kind of headed off into the great wide open.
Mm.
And that's when we went to Bali afterwards. And, so I can sort of semi pause there, or I can continue. What do you think?
Well, I want to, yeah, I feel like we need to keep going. Like I definitely want to hear more about the journey and what kind of unfolded for you next.
So I will pause to just recap a couple things that were my lessons that I learned in that first phase. And one of them you already touched on, but it's really important to reiterate, because I don't feel most people get the gift that I got,
Hmm.
which is, in society, we may know all the things that you and I are just talked about, Jillian, like meditation and listening to your heart. But there's always a part of us, we're really conditioned in this society that, yeah, that'd be partially true, but it'd be way easier if I had the house, if I had that financial security, if I had those things that make life a lot more comfortable. And I had all those things,
Hmm.
and they did not fill any of what my soul was looking for. And so why I say that's such a blessing was, I know I had that experience. I lived it, where life will be better when this environment changes, or when my job changes, or when I get this
Yeah.
promotion, or I make more money, or, there's probably a certain line to that. I talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, if we're just in survival mode, maybe that's different. If we're
Hmm.
thinking about how to put food on the table or just survive every day, you probably don't have the luxury. That's likely the most important thing. So being slightly up that scale, having more than the house, and more, having the car and the recreation stuff, those things never really satiated what that internal voice was telling me that
Hmm.
I really needed to start listening to. And
And if
so,
I might
yeah.
just reiterate this piece, because so I work with people at varying levels in business. Some are at the beginning stages, some are at up leveling, but there's a lot that I work with who are actually like successful on paper, have kind of
Yeah.
what you're talking about, everything that you would think one would want or need to be happy. And they come to me because they're missing the joy. And so
Yeah.
it just kind of, like I feel like this idea of the externals being the motivators, it only gets you so far. And so
Yeah.
it's another reason why I love like you and your message around what this gets to look like when you bring your heart to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Gigi. I have this weird thing going on in my head where I want to call you Jillian in this professional setting. So I'm gonna
Take off the
reconcile this.
business coat, man.
Wow. Yeah,
It's
no
the
kidding. I'm
blazer.
like, what am I wearing?
It's your work
Um,
pants.
I'm gonna put yeah, for sure. You gotta put like, I'll put a tie-dye shirt on after this, and you can post that to the clip. But yeah, the business coat and the white collar is kind of messing me up. Um, the second gift in
Is it
that
that my hair is
was,
done?
it's all of it. I can't, yeah.
It's
Put your
my name
blue,
on the screen.
yeah, name on the screen. Where's the blue matching
I'm wearing a
sweatsuit?
blazer. Holy shit.
All this blazer action. So
Oh my goodness.
the gift of having experienced something that I'm grateful. I know that a lot of people don't get to experience that, but that's kind of the formula. Not always, but that formula is, I think, is where billionaires are made. they make themselves still pursuing that, right? At that next level, it's an infinite level of billions, millions, billions, and trillions. Will never satiate that.
Hunger.
And
Yeah.
I got to experience that in my own way. I think there's probably well-directed people that have figured that out and have billions of dollars, and God bless them, and that's great. And hopefully they can do a lot of good with that. But the other thing I learned about anxiety, I guess, a definition that I like to share from that experience is my anxiety was always at its loudest. For me, anxiety is the energy that fills the gap between what your soul or your heart is calling to you to do and the life you're actually living. So if my pursuit is in a different direction than really what the most loving next step is for myself, anxiety will come into the equation to redirect it. It's a misalignment between what I'm truly here to do and how I'm actually living. So that was super helpful for me. And I definitely want to share that with your listeners if they're experiencing it, because I know, there's other contributing factors. I'm not an expert on this, but I've definitely lived with it and had a daughter that lived with it or lives with it. And, nutrition can be in play. There's other factors. It's not always that one thing, but I think it's the biggest thing for most
May I
people.
interject here around drinking?
Oh yeah,
Because
here we go.
I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder when I was younger. And my listeners know that I have been sober now coming up. Oh, is it either 10 or 11 years? But actually, when I released drinking, my anxiety went away. I
Yeah.
still have little moments of
Mhm.
that feeling, but it is nothing like it used to be, where it was almost like that desire, like that need to numb it or make it go away would just like actually amplify it. So that misalignment, as you're talking about in my
Mhm.
life, in my spirit,
Mhm.
was really like me trying to control it with alcohol or substances or trying to numb it, like numb that discomfort, really just amplified it for me. So the release of the thing and just the facing of the feelings and allowing the feelings to be the compass that actually guided into alignment and continue to now,
Mhm. Mhm.
has really reduced my anxiety. Like I honestly don't even feel like I have it at all anymore. So maybe you
Yeah.
want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I can completely relate. And I sometimes think of things in equations. So I think most of us, I'll speak for myself, used alcohol in the same way, which was, okay, I'm out of alignment, but I didn't know that at the time. So I've got this physiological symptom of anxiety, and alcohol did take it away temporarily, right? It was like, okay, that slowed things down, a way to escape and numb that. But then the next day, it comes back even louder because you're now even more out of alignment because you've added something to numb that so that you're not paying attention to the misalignment, and
Yeah.
it amplifies. And there's a lot of I think that's more of I think of alcohol, like I love love, it's interesting that it's called a spirit,
Yes.
and I think it's got an energetic signature that, steals away, it quiets part of our healthy spirit and
Yeah.
it redirects it into an unhealthy spirit. And when I decided to be sober, which isn't, it's about 3.5 years ago, that has been another tool that's allowed me to be way more clear and way more in touch with,
Yeah.
because then it went from, drinking to numb or to, have fun or whatever, escape. And I was a good drinker. You and I have had some good chats about that. I think, if we get a time machine, we got to go back and like see what that
Have a
kind of
few.
fun, see what that
Which would not
fun
be a
night could
few,
look.
for the record. We already know it would
Yeah,
be
we'll say a
wild and
few,
out of
but
control.
it'll be 10, and even 10 probably sounds light. You know, and it was kind of a cool, probably one of, other than my family, my biggest accomplishment was after, not being like an alcoholic that was destroying their life. I had it under control, if you will, but it wasn't good for me.
Mm.
And my growth was stunted. I couldn't find out or hear the next level. And it just became, as most of us know, and most of my friends that ask me about why I quit drinking, or you lose some friends, because it just is a part of the social program. Like,
Yeah.
We do this together. And so,
Yeah.
I was kind of in that stage, and it was more of a habit at that time. I had got more clear, but it was still a limitation to my growth and where I could go. So
I
yeah.
so
And
identify with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so maybe to get back to the story, so the call for me was, I can't learn more about myself from here. So I sold the business, was sort of had all the stuff in it from a metaphor standpoint. It had, sort of the life that I was adopting, that my parents said, this is the way to go. And so I look back, and if I had some of the awarenesses I do now, maybe I could have figured it out, within that business, but it was the right choice for me. And I call that, the kind of heading out into the desert, depending on, so many cultures, from indigenous cultures to Christianity, talk about, that exploration, right? Where you sort of leave everything behind. And
Mhm.
that was really the motivation, where I was like, okay, I want to get to know myself without all these things. And I was really blessed again in that business was profitable and financial. So I got to leave with some money, which I
Mhm.
didn't have to immediately race to go figure out how to pay the bills. And many people don't get that opportunity, but whether they do or they don't, I think it's still the same sort of journey, but I got to jump kind of more fully into it. And we went to Bali shortly afterwards, and a lot of things happened. Heading out to the desert when you don't really know, or heading out into the void, all my programming and inherited beliefs came to the surface, and I almost blew a lot of things up. I almost blew our marriage up at that time. My ego and my identity was looking drastically for something to hold on to, right?
Mm.
A lot of those beliefs came, and fortunately, I have the wise and beautiful partner that many of your listeners have heard on this podcast. So
Mhm.
just grateful that I have the right person in Mandy in my life, and we're able to navigate some of those things together. She had context for it, and we survived kind of that initial year of change, and then went to Bali. And I described the Bali time as, okay, I've done the things. My relationship with God at the time was, hey, I did everything, I listened to the call. Now we joked about it. I think I was waiting for the guru to wait for me at the 7-Eleven in Bali. That's what I had in mind. I'm like,
Yeah.
I did all the
Cause
things.
Slurpees.
Oh, where's the guru? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't actually think there's any 7-Elevens in Bali, but there's a lot of corner stores. Katut's corner store is really the
Kachits.
7-Eleven.
It
Katut's,
sounds.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, sort of 3 months in, when there wasn't a guru waiting for me, I hit, an emotional rock bottom, where that was the next part of the journey, was realizing I needed to build the next steps myself. Nobody was coming in to save me. I had just done the first step, not all the steps. And
Yeah.
that first step was changing the environment. And so, yeah, that was kind of the heading out into the void, and, to kind of bring us back to the journey arc. Bali was an amazing year for me to really just embody those practices, really become aware of who I was without all the identity things. I was
Mhm.
the president of the entrepreneurs organization. I was, seen as I don't know, a business leader in the community. So leaving and moving allowed me to shed all those things. And
Mhm.
by shedding them, I had to learn who I was without all those ego attachments. And I was able to do that in a healthy way, I guess, through some kicking and screaming in Bali. I love telling that part of the story, because most people are like, oh, that was nice, you went and had a sabbatical in Bali
You're
for the
like,
year.
that was
And
hell.
most of it was amazing and beautiful, and
Mhm.
so grateful for the environment. But internally, there was definitely half of it that felt like an inner hell for me.
So we're coming back home. We're collecting our people. We're connecting. Where are you at now in your journey?
Yeah. So returning is, sort of the last phase of that. But you know, I love referencing the initial text of the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell read and understood, and there's so many interpretations of it. Was written in the 13th century by Dante Alighieri, and Italian interpretation of very many biblical connotations in it. But when you start to identify who you are, and when I returned home, you start energetically putting out that signal of in Dante's Inferno, which is a part of the arc, you kind of hit some sort of version of rock bottom. And then when you find yourself and start climbing up your new life with who you are now, like once you know yourself, the people show up. And in his interpretation, that person is sort of an angel named Virgil,
Mm,
and Virgil came on the scene. And so, yeah, I came back and I had the people that were from my old world that didn't understand me now. And that was
mm,
fine, although hard. And some of them are still in my life in the same way or different ways, but still there. And many new people came in, including you, Gigi,
mm,
and having the lifestyle meditation, this studio that Mandy and I had was like the homing beacon, I think, for people that were in that resonance. And sort of that built the new community and the new soul family that was around us. And now in my life, with both what I'm doing for kind of like a day-to-day work job and what I'm doing with the men's group, I have that community that I'm doing it with. And
yeah.
so the return is the opportunity to kind of return home, if you will, as your full self, or the lessons that you learned. Maybe there's many more I don't know if I have to go out into the desert again, but maybe I do. And if I do, that's great, because I'm going to pick up more pieces that will make me more complete and more people and community. And then I'll be able to serve in even a greater way. So I feel like I'm able to serve some of the avenues very similarly, like the business that I started in 2001. I'm still kind of in a business that's associated with that. And I get to serve it with much more appreciation and in a very different way. And then being able to pursue what I'm doing with Longship, a homing beacon. I'm finding our membership there are a community of men that it's astonishing to me. I think we're almost at 50 members now. And
Wow.
there isn't one person that doesn't feel like they fit, and so
Wow.
that's been a miracle.
I have full shivers. Okay, let's
Yeah.
talk about Longship. Let's dive in. Um,
Mhm.
so you sent me what did you send me?
I sent you our handbook.
Handbook. Okay, so
Yeah.
John sent me his handbook and I opened it and I immediately started crying. And at first I was like, oh no, we don't have, we're not going to. And then I read it and I was like, oh yeah, we are 100% sharing this right now. So thank you for sending that to me and following the
Yeah.
nudge. That's your heart working.
Mhm.
That's your manifester self. It's like gets the urge and follows the urge. And I celebrate that. So I want to read the intro to the Longship Handbook. You are
Please.
not here by accident. Something called you, a quiet voice that said, there must be more than this. Welcome to Longship, a modern brotherhood rooted in modern wisdom, where men gather not to posture, but to grow. We are not a club, a course, or a weekend escape. We are a vessel, a crew, a mission. Longship was created to defy the myth that a man must carry everything alone. Here you'll find a space to be seen without the armor, challenged without judgment, and supported without condition. Through counsel, through challenge, and through brotherhood, we forge ourselves into the kind of men our families, our communities, and our souls are waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dab, dab. I should not have worn bottom mascara. I knew it.
Oh, well,
Wow.
I and what I would share on that, Jillian, I think the most important sentence there, and I have it up too, so I'll read it, is that Longship was created to defy the myth that a man must carry everything alone.
Yeah.
So, I have two incredible friends that we genuinely refer to each other as brothers. I think that the brother word can sort of be thrown around a little bit. You and I off camera were joking about, broheim, bra, like bra, hey, bra.
Yeah.
And what is the definition of brother? But for us, it's that willingness to allow you to see the innermost part of each other. And before we
Mhm.
even kicked off Longship, my two partners in the founders in it, Cody Lakefold and Ryan Collins, we spent 2 years together just forging our relationship through lunches once a week and talking about this idea, realizing we needed it. Like we wanted it for ourselves. And we were doing
Yeah.
that for each other in a small way, I guess, or in a deep way, but just with three of us. And then fortunately, another friend, we always had ambitions to serve that way. Friend came in and said, you guys are never going to get this thing going because you're just all visionary guys and nobody's going to do anything. And I'm like, hey, I know how to do things. And so I'm grateful for that. I was grateful for that nudge. And then we opened it up, and really it's that sentence that you read and that I reshared is, there's just many men, myself included, in my life that, that preformed conditioning and societal conditioning, that tendency is that you got to bear those things alone. And the language in the handbook is really nice, but I often think of it as a backpack. We all have a backpack of, my family responsibilities or my work or my job or staying fit, or, my relationships with my friends or anything that we contribute to. And we, tend to put those things in there. And when some of them aren't working anymore, the emotion of, for men being vulnerable isn't often taught, where it's initially shared potentially as weakness, because we're wired in a lot of society in competition, whether that's in sports or in work, and want to hide those weaknesses because society says if you show them, your competitor is going to take advantage of you, and that could end whatever it is, hardwired back from thousands of years ago, end your life to just end what you're trying to pursue. And for us, we knew that wasn't true. We knew that there was, yes, competition can be helpful at times, but it's not the predominant nature of who we are. We're more collaborative. And, so we just created a container where we led by example, sharing our vulnerabilities, and created a safe environment where men immediately, the readiness of society, of the men that have joined us, from guys a year and a half ago and the first boat crew, as we call it, to, the newest member who was just in our meeting yesterday, always have a quick debrief with the new guys as, how was their first day? How was their experience? And they're grateful and shocked how deep everybody goes right off the get-go and puts real stuff on the table. And we don't have the answers. We're not psychologists, but just sharing and realizing you're not alone. And, we do a lot of experience share. When somebody empties their backpack and says, here's the things that I'm carrying, they see that at least one other to several others have been carrying the same load in their own way, in a different way. And they, then you just feel less alone. And sometimes those other men or brothers have been through it. And so yourself that you can get through it too, because somebody else, it's not necessarily the end. And your mind can sometimes think that's the end. You're going to be a failure. You're not sure how you're going to get through this. So we use something called Gestalt, which is men also like to be problem solvers, you may have heard. And that's not gender specific, but it tends to be a shared trait. And we're not there to solve each other's problems, but we're there to share our experience of our journey through our version of that problem. And it's more of an invitation that if that feels like it could be helpful to you, you can take a lot away from just hearing somebody else's experience. Or then maybe that's somebody you want to call on and go for lunch or coffee and say, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, because maybe if I do the same thing, it'll help me get through this. And so that's what we do.
Yeah. I'm just feeling called as we're kind of bringing things to a close for today, because this is just the ant on the gnat's ass.
I should have told you, but I'll tell you now.
Okay.
Speaking of competition.
Okay.
It still exists. You did 2-part series with Mandy, so my intention was a 3-part series.
Okay, a 3. Then she'll come back on. Then you'll come back on, and then it'll be the Gigi Juan Mimi show. I love it for sure. I will absolutely love to have you back on. There's so many topics that I just really want to explore, and I just, again, I love you. I love your leadership. I love what you're bringing in the world and how you're showing up. And I think not just men, because it's not just the men. It's like, it's not just the women. It's like the men, families, people, the world needs this work. We all need it. And I'm just so grateful for you
Thank you.
and Cody and Ryan for bringing this, bringing it through, manifesting, the bringing it through, the grounding it down, the landing it, you've landed it. And now you're calling people in. And so I'd love to know, like, who is this for? If you could sum up, like, if you're like, the call is for what type of person or where they're at, or kind of what would you say? Who is this? Who is
Mhm.
the Longship for?
It's for, really in broad terms. I'll touch on, we weren't sure that it was needed just for men. There
Mm,
was like these practices that we embody and share and do together are universal. They're not just for men. However, most of the arena, when I started going on my journey with Mandy, 90% of the people in those venues were women.
mhm,
And not, maybe that's because Mandy was putting them on, or but I did some other things outside of that, and so that it appeared to me that the feminine had already engaged more wholly, holistically, I guess, in a knowingness of this is what we need as a species to continue to grow and move forward. And there would always be the odd dude, and me and another bra in the yoga teacher training or whatever, and or the meditation. And so it was really just a calling of, it's okay to do this for men, because there's a bit of a stigma of, men share differently often
mhm,
around if there's women in the environment, and out of whatever their conditioning was. And so it's for men that feel, like we say in the handbook, that they're still searching. There's a call. They know that they can serve even in a greater way. And for some men, some of our members, they feel like nothing's working, right? They're sort of they're at the end of their rope, if you will. And not, we're not replacing venues of professional support when it comes to when we all need or could use professional support. So we encourage that, and
mhm,
we do direct people that maybe aren't ready to enter our container to professional support. However, most men that are joining Longship, and we have, we've a 75-year-old and we have a 22-year-old.
love it.
So, the age category is broad, and it's really just people that want to join a community of men that are looking to explore and get to know themselves more deeply, and then, pursue their the next best version of their self. So they're all directed to, you know, feel more joy, and
Yeah.
some practices, and to serve in a greater way. Like
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, that might just be being happier at work the next day because you
Yeah.
don't feel like you're alone. Or it might be, one of our, we call them archetype partners, which are one of our founding archetype partners is Mark Devine, who's, a very accomplished leadership development human, and he's been in the personal growth space forever. He started SEAL Fit, and he's a former Navy SEAL commander. And we're so blessed to have Mark, but Mark goes through the same journey as the rest of us, and he maybe
Mhm.
has a little more tenure in applying these practices. And there's other people in Longship that I think are really serving at a high leadership level, and they're finding just the humanness to come into the boat, as we say,
Yeah.
and just be human and share what
Mm.
they're going through. And so really, it's for all men that feel called for a community that will be supportive. And maybe they feel like they're going to offer support, maybe they feel like they're going to receive some support, and we get to
Yeah.
do both along the way.
Amazing. Okay. Where can we find you? Where can we find Longship?
Yeah, thanks, Gigi. So the website is the best place, longshipmen.com. And there's an application form on there that people can fill out, and that's the best next step. And then we run, right now we're just in Edmonton, but we're about to expand into different regions. But yeah, Edmonton, and we meet in person. So we it would be Edmonton folks for now, but if somebody's really called and inspired and here's this and would love to get something going in their community, we have a model to support that as well, to expand.
Awesome.
We also have Instagram as well. It's Longship Men as well. So that's the Longship stuff. And I'm at John Douglas Trapp is where you can find me, both on LinkedIn and on social media,
Okay. And we'll link all of that
Instagram.
in the show notes. I just want to say thank you for being you, Juan. And thanks for showing up in the world, in your family, in friendship, in community, and leadership, in business, in all of it, the way that you do. Yeah, you're a bright light. And I'm so grateful to know you.
Thank you, Gigi. I feel blessed to have that same inspiration and gratitude for you. And I've been one of your biggest podcast fans, as you're fabulous at this. And I can't believe we chewed through our time because I'm like, wow, we got lots to talk about if we
We have so
wanted,
much
but this
more.
was amazing. So thank you so much, and you're doing a fabulous job. And I'm blessed to engage with your community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And you're coming back. So stay tuned for more from John Trapp. And yeah, just have a blessed day.
Thanks, Gigi. You too.